Welcome to our National Conversation, a podcast in which we discuss politics from all angles. We are completely nonpartisan, and all views, respectfully stated, are welcome here. Our podcast is unique in that it is hosted and run by students who are focused on finding solutions to the biggest problems facing America.
Greetings. Welcome to our National Conversation. My name is Jeff Hall. I'm the editor and CEO of this nonpartisan group. We have a bunch of students from all around the country who power this organization. We've had over 1,000 interns since our beginning in 2020. Every once in a while, we get together like this and record a podcast. We discuss issues of importance to our students and the nation. Today is Monday, January 26th, and 2 days ago, we all witnessed a tragic shooting in Minneapolis. That's our topic today. We're going to be talking about ICE in Minneapolis and ICE and border and security and all those issues that are wrapped up into that. We have some special guests today. We've got, let's see here, we got Eric Ortiz. He's a local journalist in Minneapolis. And Eric, why don't I start with you? And before we jump into the questions, why don't you just introduce yourself, and then I'll have the other guests introduce themselves.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you all the students at our National Conversation. You guys do great work. I'm honored to be here talking about with you tonight. My name is Eric Ortiz, and I'm a longtime journalist, and I live in Minneapolis. I've lived here since 2019. I also run a nonprofit organization here in Minneapolis, youth and community development organization called Strong Mind, Strong Body Foundation, and been very active in the community the last few years with community building ever since we moved here and after all the civil unrest a few years ago. But what's been happening here has been has affected the whole city and Minneapolis and surrounding areas and the state. Some people have described it as a war zone. I witnessed this firsthand. We got caught up in a few ICE enforcement operations, just going about our daily lives. Got tear gas. Was deployed at one of the places we were at. The shooting that happened over the weekend and the death that happened at the hands of federal agents is about half a mile from where we live. So I heard a lot of anecdotal evidence and stories about what's been going on. This isn't, contrary to some of the narratives that are being put out there. All of these protests and just actions from the residents have been largely peaceful, mostly peaceful, all peaceful that I've seen. People are just upset with the dehumanization that's been happening with people. And the way they've been countering that is by, recording video, firsthand accounts of what's happening, exercising the First Amendment right to document what's happening and document the injustices. There've been a lot of constitutional rights violations, civil rights violations, human rights violations that people have been witnessing and putting online, on social media, on all different platforms. And that's really what's been able to, set the public record and counter a lot of the official accounts that have come from, people in positions of power who are trying to spin it one way, but it doesn't always align with what's really happening on the ground. And so what's really important, actually just driving by Whipple building right now, that's ICE headquarters. That's where they're, staging all the operations here, but it's been like a war zone. It felt the last few weeks like American citizens have been terrorized by federal forces in some cases, and seeing a lot of that firsthand. But the important thing is just to get to the facts and get to the truth and hold people accountable. No one is above the law, and just want to when it comes to immigration, there needs to be a reform in this country. The system is not working, and we can do it in a much more humane way. But that's what people want here. They want, transparency, accountability, and they want to make sure that things are done the right way. So a lot of people have come together in the city, and surrounding areas to observe what's happening, to protect neighbors, to make sure that, everything is done the right way. And we've witnessed a lot of things that haven't been done the right way, abuses of power and, trying to intimidate people, trying to scare people, and want to just make sure that, people are held accountable and the truth gets out there and the facts. And so that's, what I've been able to do, been able to, when I've been out on and observing and, we've been recording video, taking pictures, documenting what's happening and just trying to present, an honest breakdown of what's happening so that people across the country can understand and not, what's really happening. Because sometimes national media and traditional media, mainstream media, they don't really tell the whole story. And you get the whole full context from people on the ground. Local media is doing a great job. There's a lot of independent media here. It's in Minnesota, and also that people have come from outside Minnesota document what's happening. And so, and then citizens have been documenting what's happening. And so it's really important to get the facts out there and set the public record. And that's what's been happening. And so I'm really happy to be here to talk about this with you all.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Okay, next, let's turn to Garrison Rushing. You're in Minnesota right now. Where are you located, and what is your relationship to Minneapolis?
I live down by Mankato, Minnesota, southern Minnesota. My relationship to Minneapolis, I lived there for 4 years when I was going to school at the U. And I have a lot of friends that still live there and communicate with them frequently.
And what are they telling you?
They're really concerned. I was there a few months ago before it started getting really bad, and just firsthand accounts of them seeing ICE pull like their neighbors out of their cars and leaving the rest of their family to just kind of deal with having their family member taken. Restaurants having interactions with ICE and trying to kick them out, and that becoming a big local story. So it's just really not the city it was at the time when I was there, and just it's really hard to find other descriptors other than like a war zone.
Okay. Lori Guggenheim, you're from Los Angeles. I know you here locally, but you were just in Minneapolis this weekend, and you spent several years in Minneapolis. Tell us your background and what you think's going on.
My background is I'm an attorney, but lived in Minnesota, St. Paul specifically from 2010 to 18, and was heavily involved with the Somali community. I taught and volunteered and mentored for all 8 years in the Somali community. So I was back in St. Paul just this past weekend to visit some friends, and also I was going to check in on some of the girls that I tutored. Now I tutor their children by Zoom. They're worried. They're afraid. I did not get over to the area, Bloomington, where there's a huge community. I stayed in St. Paul for the 2 days. While there wasn't anything actively going on right around where we were, my friends have been watching, and these are middle-aged women taking classes on how to record and how to safely confront. But after what's happened now, they're afraid to do that. They've seen it going on in shopping center, little outdoor shopping centers. They've seen in parking lots, ICE coming out of the car, the trucks setting up, pulling people over with, just brutish. And it's just horrifying what happened. I know the area well, where the latest murder happened. And it's a community of poets and nurses and doctors and teachers. And it's terrifying to see it happening.
Lori, I want to keep you in the hot seat for a moment. For those of us who don't really fully understand, tell us why there are so many Somalis in Minnesota. What's the background there? How did they come here? Are they legal? Are they illegal? And how do they fit in with the community?
Right. Okay. So the Lutheran Church, is my understanding, was very active when Somalia became so dangerous and was declared a war zone. They started bringing over war refugees. And I get teary eyed thinking about it. By the time I came in 2010, it was slowing down, but you were still getting people being brought over legally under war refugee status. And people like the girls I tutored, kids I tutored, their parents would put them on a plane to any kind of friend or relative that would sponsor them. They would stay back in Somalia. And one of the girls, I'm like a daughter to me, Ayan, she was 13 years old. And she was put on a plane by her mother, who said, "You're going." And she had family, and I met her when she was 14. She was here on her refugee status, later became very proudly a full citizen. There were just countless of these young people, and they were so grateful to have the opportunity to go to school. They were so grateful to have the opportunity for help. And, you know, they would just find anywhere, any friend, family connection to live with. These young people were outstanding. I mean, it was Miss Lori, Miss Lori, Miss Lori. And, you know, you do this for free. You teach us. Thank you. And I tutored some of them all the way through college. As mentioned, I then continued to tutor their children by Zoom when I came back to LA. The community is very tight. But St. Paul, Minneapolis was very welcoming. There was never a problem, whether Democrat, Republican, there was never a problem with the Somali community and, you know, with wearing the traditional hijabs and doing the prayer breaks in class. So even though they very much did keep their culture, at least first generation, there was total acceptance. There was no community outrage. There's certainly no reason for ICE with respect to the harassment that they're now giving to the Somali community. Matter of fact, when the fire happened here in the Palisades, I had former students trying to Venmo me money because they were so worried if I was okay out here in LA. That is the kind of community they are. They're very loving, and they're very loyal and very appreciative to be US citizens, and they came here legally.
Have you had any discussions with your Somali friends about the allegations of fraud in Minnesota? Apparently, they've been accused of rigging the system with the social welfare programs to provide daycare, but in a lot of cases, the daycare isn't actually provided. These are empty buildings with no students inside. I mean, from the outside looking in, it sounds pretty alarming.
Yes, it sounds pretty alarming. I think I have not spoken to them about that. I know they you know, let's face it, there is fraud of every type in our cities, and some of it by white people, some of it by brown people. Sadly, crime and fraud is everywhere. From what I can tell, my friends, my, you know, middle-aged mother friends, they don't seem to, which I'm glad, blame the Somali population at large. They blame government maybe for not catching it, for not regulating better. That's just, what I hear is more anger, that it should have been caught, that this kind of money shouldn't have happened. But I have not really heard anger directed at the Somali community as a whole. I mean, yes, of course, the people who were committing the fraud, and I've had some of my friends ask, did I know anyone who had set up something like that? Like, no.
Okay. Okay. In batting cleanup here, we have Don Poblins. Don, you and I go back a very long way. I think we've known each other since we were 11 or 12. And so you and I lived through something together that was reminiscent of what we're experiencing today, and that's the Kent State shootings in 1970. The U.S. had expanded the Vietnam War into Cambodia. The student uprisings were overnight, and at one of the college campuses, Kent State in Ohio, 4 students actually got shot and killed by the National Guard. And a lot of those feelings that we had then are coming back to me now. But you represent a conservative point of view, and I'd love to hear what you think here so that we can round out the conversation and make sure all points of view are covered.
Okay, well, I don't have, all of the information really quite yet. I mean, I just heard about that Saturday shooting this morning because, like a lot of people, we were watching football, hate to admit it, all day. But so I just heard about that. But to me, it just, the difference between maybe Kent State and what's going on today is people are going toward the danger. I don't think anybody was doing that at Kent State. They weren't trying to get the National Guard to do something that they shouldn't be doing. And I think in this case, in the case of what's going on in Minnesota, it seems to me, I don't know why all these people keep showing up and causing all of the disruptions that are going on. Because one of the things I heard that I thought was really right on was, people are saying that these guys aren't trained. You probably heard that, right? By now,
Yes.
the ICE people. Well, yeah, they're not trained in crowd control, for one thing. And they are trained in, police, picking bad hombres, as they want to call it, up and doing those kinds of things, but they're not trained for any kind of rioting or any kind of crowd control. So what's really happening too is that you have Minnesota, they're not helping out. There's no police force helping out to try to control all of the, kind of the extremities of things going on besides the quote, ICE arrests themselves. So they're kind of left on their own, and there's nobody helping them. And I understand that today, I think Governor Walz and Trump talked on the phone, and I guess something's going to come of that to where, maybe now we'll get to see the actual local police in the cities working in conjunction with federal enforcement instead of not showing up at all. And I think people were emboldened by some of the things that were said by the mayor and by Waltz himself to go take all these pictures and get in the way of all these activities. And frankly, that's not a good idea. I mean, I would not ever be there, personally, no matter what I thought about the politics of the situation. I would not put myself in that danger. And you have to wonder why these people are doing that. Why are they? So I think it'll be good, I think, if they finally get everyone working together, including the local police, and get it straightened out, because it's kind of like the local police just wash their hands of everything. All these citizens are going out there and doing whatever the hell they want to do and kind of disrupting what the federal government is trying to exercise. And I don't get it. I don't think it's the same as Kent State.
You said you were watching football this weekend. Did you actually see the video yet of the shooting?
Actually, I haven't seen the actual. I've seen stills of it. I don't know why I haven't seen the video, but if on Instagram, there's a lot of stills and things. So I think they're trying to figure out, did the guy pull his gun out or not? They know he had a gun. They know he had additional ammunition on them, which kind of is surprising because I have a carry permit myself. And typically, when you have a carry permit, that allows you to carry a gun, obviously, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to carry a gun and a couple more clips with you either. So to me, it's suspicious or strange to hear that this guy had a gun and a couple extra clips with him. What is he doing with that stuff? Why is he even there with that kind of array on him? It doesn't make sense. And then they turn and then unfortunately he got shot. Now, did he pull his phone or did he pull his gun? I don't know. I haven't seen all the details yet.
Okay,
Some
I
people
do
say he just had
recommend,
his.
yeah, I
Yeah,
recommend that you watch the
I
video.
could speak to that. I could
Go
speak to
ahead.
that. I've
Okay,
seen
go
the
ahead.
video.
Yeah,
I've seen the
yeah.
video, multiple angles, 5, 6 angles, different angles. And he was there to observe, legally observe what was going on, because there has since ICE came to town, they have been abusing their power. They've been terrorizing citizens, U.S. citizens, not just going after bad guys, what they say their mission is. Um, but they shot Renee Good on January 7th in her car. They tried to spin it like she was they called her a domestic terrorist immediately after the shooting, when she was actually, the last word she said to the officer was, "I'm not mad at you." And she was very friendly with him. And then the video shows her reversing her car and pulling away. Um, and the officer, standing in front of the car, which goes against police training, proper protocol, and then shooting her. The kill shot, he shot her 3 times, and the last shot went through the side window. Um, they didn't allow doctor on the scene to check on her. She had a pulse, and then they might have been able to save her, but she wasn't able to be saved. So, and then after that, they closed the investigation and did not allow local state officials, BCA, to do a joint investigation. They took total control of the crime scene and did not allow any, collaborative effort and any transparency in this investigation. So this is why people on the ground, from that moment and even before that, all the videos that people have been seeing, them abusing their power, terrorizing people, you know, pulling people out of cars, breaking windows. I witnessed this firsthand. Somebody who was there just stuck in traffic like we were and got caught up in a domestic, in a enforcement operation on a public street. Um, and then they pulled a woman from the car who was just there as a bystander. They called her a domestic terrorist and an agitator, and she was obstructing the operation. That was not what happened at all. We have video. My wife recorded video that shows what happened beforehand. And this is why it's so important for people on the ground to really show what's going on. People are not going there to protest and obstruct. They're just going there to observe legally. It's a First Amendment, which is part of, people's constitutional rights, who can observe. And these guys on Saturday, the ICE officer, the man who was killed was just helping a woman. The ICE officer went and pushed the woman, 2 women, then he pepper sprayed him. Then Alex Pretty was his name. He went to help pick the woman up. Then they pushed him, pepper sprayed him. And then 4 or 5 ICE agents surrounded him. Federal agents surrounded him, took him to the ground, wrestled him, disarmed him. He was only holding a phone recording. His gun was holstered. All the video shows this. They took his gun and then they shot him 9, 10 times in execution, public execution of a U.S. citizen on the street, a white man. That all the video shows that. And so this is why people are out observing, because, the ICE has not shown, and Department of Homeland Security and a lot of, of official accounts have not shown that they can be transparent and trusted. And so this is a way to counter that and to ensure accountability, to ensure transparency, to ensure, that people do things the right way. And that goes for everyone. People want public safety. Everyone in Minnesota wants public safety, and people are out there because they don't feel safe. And the reason they don't feel safe is because ISIS come to the community and terrorized people, intimidated people. I've heard many stories. Grandmas getting, yeah, getting intimidated, women, children. It's
But it's like you say, you're hearing stories about
I'm,
that.
I'm seeing
We
I'm
don't,
seeing video, seeing video.
right.
These are
But
trusted people.
the question, Eric, to me still goes back to what I said. What are they doing there in the first place?
They're
Why are they wanting
protesting.
to?
Well,
They're constitutional observers.
But it's
They're
been going on
exercising
for
their
over.
First Amendment rights to ensure that all human rights are protected. Civil rights are protected, so there are no civil rights violations, no human rights violations. Because that if ICE is allowed to operate with impunity, then they are violating people's civil rights, their human rights, and they're killing people,
But
innocent people.
where have we found where they are arresting the wrong people and all of that? Where's that data?
That's
That's what
all
I want
over.
to see.
There are dozens of stories of people who have been arrested, U.S. citizens who have been taken to Whipple building, uh, arrest. There's video of it.
Well,
There's
I'd
there's
like to see
there's.
that. I'd like to
there
see
You
was
that.
a
should.
press conference this morning that I would recommend if you haven't seen it, you should try and find it. It was a press conference with the Minneapolis chief of police, with his officers and other, district, behind him. And he was speaking to the fact that, first of all, they haven't been able to coordinate with the ICE operations because it's kind of like a renegade band kind of going around to different areas. They don't know when it's going to happen. But more importantly, he was speaking to your point about their own officers and police officers are being pulled over if they're brown and being asked to have to show their identification. And that it's gotten to the point now that he says not that the police officers are more valuable than any other person, but just to demonstrate the fact that people, yes, coming from the chief of police, my officers are being pulled over and being roughed up and having to produce their documentation of who they are, when the reason they were being pulled over was basically because they were brown. It
Okay,
is real. It
Okay.
is real. And speaking toward the people of Minnesota, from what I know, they show up not because they want to run into danger, but because they're really kind and they care about their neighbors.
I think we have one more group.
okay, Eric, if you need to go, if you want 30 seconds more, you can have it, and then we're going to open it up to the students for their questions and comments.
I can stay.
Okay, good. All right. Who has something they would like to say, something they would like to ask? Maybe they'd like to direct a comment to somebody who's already spoken. Garrison, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I had a couple things to add. I first wanted to say I think it's easy to see this as why are people putting themselves in danger, but I think this is in their communities. A lot of people don't have the privilege of being able to just stay at home and just watch this on the news. It's happening outside. It's happening to their neighbors. And I had my own reservations about the first shooting we had. That one seemed a little more murky. But seeing the videos of this most recent shooting, it's almost like the Rodney King incident, where it seems so hard to say that it was justified at all. That it just really raises a lot of questions about why ICE had to be there at all. And also, I would like to say, kind of towards the man carrying the gun, he had it legally. I'm very concerned about citizens not being able to exercise their Second Amendment right. He never even pulled the gun out. And I know there's been a lot made in conservative media about him having 2 extra magazines. It's his prerogative to decide if he needs to bring those with him. He's carrying legally, and I think too much is being made of that, and he really, it seems like he really died because he was exercising his Second Amendment right. And I know it has not been verified yet, but it seems to me that after they took the gun off of him, the gun had a negligent discharge, so it went off. I don't know if that was an issue with the firearm or the ICE officer who was carrying it away, but that seems to have sparked the other ICE officer's shooting of the victim. So it just doesn't. It doesn't seem to me that at any time any of those ICE agents were in danger of their lives, and they outnumbered him. They were holding him down. It's just it's really heartbreaking to me.
Okay, who's next? You know, my dear grandma in heaven, she taught me to be a gentleman when I was a young man. And if I ever saw a woman getting pushed to the sidewalk the way this one was in the video, if I hadn't come to her aid and rescue, my grandmother would have been very upset with me. It seemed like he got in there, this guy, Alex Preddy, in a very innocent way. I mean, he was there, as Don said, and you know, you might wonder, well, why are all these people there? Why would you go in there packing heat and carrying all these extra magazines? But it didn't seem to me he was doing anything wrong other than trying to help the lady.
Man, I haven't seen all of that yet, so I don't disagree at all. I mean, I think what Garrison said, it was pretty close to what I think I heard on the news anyway. And I don't think they're done with the investigation. It very well could be that these guys get hit up for murder charges. I don't think that's out of the question. It's not, it's not impossible to think that couldn't happen.
I think one of the things that's upsetting here, at least to me anyway, is that I think within 15 minutes or so, Kristi Noem was on the air saying this guy was a domestic terrorist. Somebody else said he wanted to massacre law enforcement. I mean, I'm not sure how they can even come up with stuff like that with no evidence to back it up, but they just say it anyway, and then they try to spin the narrative in that direction, and then it takes hours before you start seeing all the video from different angles, and when you see them, it just doesn't ring true what the official spokespeople are saying. Micah, you're muted, Micah.
Hey, Jeff. Yeah, and I totally agree. I've also enjoyed watching Kristi Noem flop on being answered like questions about like, okay, so how do you justify the statements that you said immediately after the incident to like, oh, I can't answer any questions, like being selective about saying like, oh, we need to have a thorough investigation compared to immediately just tearing into the victim. And I just want to share some good news with you guys that I just saw is that Greg Bovino just was reassigned. He's been removed from Commander at Large at Border Patrol. He's being reassigned to El Centro where he was before, and he's expected to retire shortly. So that's good news. But they're going to replace him with Tom Homan, who is the guy who was investigated by the FBI before the second Trump administration for taking like a $50,000 bribe, I believe. But what I just want to ask you guys was anyone who has like protest experience or legal knowledge, can you teach us about some of the finer points between obstruction and impeding and like how that's separate from like peacefully protesting and interrupting, and like just like what are the finer points of like if you're given a lawful order that's something that's like abusing, that's actually like not in line with your rights, is that still acceptable to not follow the lawful order? Because my understanding is that even if they're telling you a lawful order that's unlawful, that's not decided at the time. You have to follow it immediately, and the correctness of it can only be decided later. Like, so if anyone can just speak about that, I'd appreciate it.
Hi, Dave Stevens. I'd like to jump in because I like that question. To my understanding, for example, someone can't tell you not to record because that's your First Amendment right. And if you stop recording, that's sort of blocking any evidence that might actually prove you're innocent. So in that case, that wouldn't be a lawful order. When it comes to obstruction, I think that's a little bit more of a gray area, because some studies have shown that I think if someone's within like 20 feet of an officer, they can get to the officer before he or she draws their gun, depending on adrenaline or whatever happens. So in theory, if someone's like 10 feet near an officer who's trying to arrest someone, that's a little close. But if they're like 20, 30 feet away on the sidewalk just recording, I would not see that as obstruction. So it is up to, the judge and the circumstances. Was that night? How many people? All that stuff. But recording from a safe distance, I would never see that as obstruction.
Yeah, the distance thing was a question for me too, because like when they say, hey, you have to clear the area, what is the area? What is clearing? What is the distance that they're specifying? Like it just seems like they say, hey, move back, and then like you saw that video of like the guy in the fox outfit dancing in front of the federal building, and then they like walk up from like way down the driveway and tackle his ass from behind, and it's just like, so what, like it seems like they can just tell you move back indefinitely is what it seems like to me. And so, but like I do enjoy the legal framing behind your 20-foot rule, and I think that makes sense.
Dave, just to let people know, you served in the military. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Rules for us, if someone's coming at you, I'll take the vehicle, for instance. If it's slowly, you're supposed to like wave, because we had flags. So you kind of wave to get their attention. They're still coming at you. If you have time, you fire a shot at the ground, and then you fire a shot at the engine block. And then if you have to, you fire a shot at the person. Now, obviously, based on the video, the distance, I don't think they had time to go through all the steps. But again, based on the speed at which the lady was driving, it didn't look like she was trying to like take out anyone. So a bullet through the windshield might have been definitely premature. I would even say, especially because you're not 100% sure there's not a kid in the back seat sleeping or something like that. So on a public street, you should never fire into a vehicle, especially if they haven't fired at you first. So, but yeah, that's.
And Dave, you served in Iraq, correct?
Yep, 2 tours.
Okay, very good. All right, who's next?
I'd like to ask, for those who are on ICE's side, to please elaborate your reasoning and justification behind your thoughts, because I cannot, for the life of me, not see these people as cartoonishly devil-horned evil, like evil, just fascist. I have to say, they are awful. These border patrol agencies. I wish that I could reach out from the bottom of my heart and give these guys the benefit of the doubt, but no, I just can't. So I would really like to hear anybody try and explain their viewpoints so that this and educate me, please.
Don, I think that falls to you.
I'm the only conservative type here. But I think, I just look at it pragmatically in some ways. I mean, these ICE guys are just doing a federal law enforcement job. That's what they're there to do. And unfortunately, they're getting attacked and spit on and all kinds of stuff. They can't really get their job done under those circumstances. Now, other places that they've gone, Knoxville and other places, they haven't had that issue. They have an issue when there's no local support, no police to help back them up or to keep the crowd under control, and they're having to do all of that themselves. So yeah, do they look bad? Yeah, but they're getting yelled at. How long has it been? A month?
I'd like to interject.
They're Americans like everybody else.
Hey, I'd like to say something. As I'm a conservative myself, and I will say what we the majority of Americans were very concerned about border control. That's one of the reasons, and this is just from the facts, that's one of the reasons why Trump was elected, why we did win the, I don't want to say we, why the conservative or Republicans won the popular vote for the first time in over 2 decades. So there was a call for immigration control, for controlling the border. A lot of the things that ICE is doing, maybe on paper, we'll say is considered legal, right? What they're doing, and then even now they're given more wiggle room now, and some might say the force is excessive. Now, as a conservative, I do believe that when it started, ICE did need to tackle this more aggressively, given the prior 4 years, the administration prior to, and how many illegal immigrants came across. So with that being said, there did need to be an aggressive approach. Now, though, we are at the stage where we do have 2 American citizens who were killed. Why were they killed? Let's let the investigations pan out. But I'll say that there's a huge polarization in our country. I mean, it is very excessive. I think what needs to happen is we need to look at the whole picture right now. I'm going to quote something Donald Trump said in a CNN interview right before he was won the presidency. He said, I don't think in terms of winning or losing. Now we can say that's kind of not very Trumpian to say that. But he says, I think in terms of getting it settled so we stop killing all these people. I want everybody to stop dying. They're dying, Russians and Ukrainians. I want them to stop dying. That sentiment that he said there was also another reason that got him elected, because it was for the human condition. My issue now is, while I'm a conservative and I do agree with we need to stop what's going on with the illegal immigration in this country, and we need to stop it forcibly. But right now, I think we need to be at a pause. I do think Frey and Walls, I do not think that they handled this situation very well. I thought they lacked leadership, and I think they constantly lack leadership. With them already going against the administration and telling these citizens, hey, this needs to stop. We need to stop. This is Gestapo coming in. How many times did we hear, even before these things were happening, that these were quote unquote ICE was Nazis, right? We need to stop these Nazis from doing what they're doing. We have them, and then we have Noam and the Trump administration, right when these incidents happen with our citizens, with US citizens dying, we have the Trump administration and Noam saying, no, ICE acted according to the law. They did everything that they should have done. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but right now we're at a place in our country where there needs to be a pause. Things are so high right now, and I'm sorry, I can't just say that it is ICE's fault and ICE alone. This is coming from the leadership in our country. This is coming from different platforms of the media in our country, where now we have conservatives and liberals, where I didn't see this maybe 15 years ago, that it's almost like a football game. And we're cheering for our side to win, when it is, hey, what about America?
Dominic, I'm very tempted to end the podcast right here and now because you said something so eloquently. What about America? You know, there's got to be some longer term vision and plan here to try to turn down the temperature. Otherwise, we're heading to some sort of an ill-defined civil war. I don't think anybody really wants that, but we're on a bad path right now. Garrison.
Oh, this is Eric. I have to go. I'd like to make a point before I go. Um, but to a couple of those points, these other cities you mentioned where there were peaceful ICE operations, they did not bring the same number of ICE troops. They say about 2,000, 3,000 ICE troops to Minneapolis. Okay. That outnumbers the Minneapolis police force by 5 times. Okay. And people are happy to get along and respect law enforcement and the rule of law. But when the people who are supposed to be enforcing the law are breaking the law, then what are you supposed to do? Because that's what's happening in Minneapolis. That's why they're being called Nazis. That's why they're being called using Gestapo techniques, because they're following the same playbook. If you look at what happened in Germany 100 years ago around World War II, they're very similar tactics. They're wearing masks. Why are they all wearing masks covering their
But
faces?
Eric, they were saying that before Minneapolis. That wasn't something that started. To be fair,
But
you're
it was
jumping
happening.
and saying that, but
I
they
just want to
started
say,
saying that prior
I
to
think we have to just
Minneapolis.
look at the facts. We have to look at the facts. We have to,
That's
you know,
correct. We have
this
to look
goes
at the
beyond,
facts.
this is now a moral issue. It goes beyond politics. It's a moral issue, what's right. And people have to look at it objectively and not colored by partisan issues, but look at what's fair. Look at respecting due process, human dignity, accountability under the law. And that's all that people want. That's what these videos show. If you're able to watch some of these videos, you'll see, you should believe what your eyes see, not what people tell you, what the official narrative, because it doesn't line up with what people see and what's happening on the ground. So I witnessed it firsthand. I know a lot of friends and neighbors who live here who have witnessed it firsthand, people I trust, who've told me there have been human rights violations, there have been civil rights violations, there have been constitutional rights violations. It's happening. And whether you want to believe it or not, that's up to you. But we have to get to a point where we lower the temperature in this country. I'm really happy to be a part of this and thankful that our national conversation is doing this and leading this conversation with young people. Creating space for thoughtful dialogue is especially important right now in difficult moments. It takes courage and care, and it gives me hope. But we have to be honest about and cannot ignore hard truths. We can't pretend that our differences don't exist. We have to be respectful of other opinions if they differ than ours and other people's experiences. We have to make sure that we're humanizing everyone and not dehumanizing people. And a lot of these things are happening, and there's a lot of work to do. We all have to work together to make this country better, live up to the highest ideals that we can for this country. But there's a lot of work to do. And if we want to rebuild trust, we have to keep talking, keep asking questions, keep challenging power, and keep refusing to dehumanize each other. But then we have to take action that moves towards justice, accountability, and understanding. And so I look forward to doing that. I love to talk more, but I have to go help my son. But I'm really thankful that Jeff for the invitation, and I love the work you all are doing. And be happy to continue this conversation so that we can do the right thing with all that we hear.
We'll have you back again,
Thank you,
Eric.
Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Harrison.
I just wanted to add a few clarifying things, just as somebody who's lived in Minneapolis. I think Dominic does bring up a good point that I don't think that Minneapolis leadership is always the best. I think in terms of what Don has been asking about the Minneapolis police not being involved in helping ICE, they're incredibly understaffed, and that is only something that's gotten worse since George Floyd and the years after. I've living in Minneapolis, I've had to call the police about a domestic violence incident that was happening next door to me, and just the response time, it took forever. They're just spread incredibly thin, and I think a lot of that is because of um, Democrat leadership not supporting the police in Minneapolis. So I understand your point, and I also, to some point, I understand. Why ICE has been so violent. I'm not saying I agree with that, but I think they've been placed in a spot where they are hated, and they are tasked with a job. They have to meet these quotas of rounding up and deporting a certain amount of people and getting these numbers up. so it'll look good for Trump. And I think it just was incredibly irresponsible for him to send the amount of ICE officers that he did um, to Minneapolis, because it was to send a message, because it happened right after the fraud allegations came out about Somali Americans, and they are naturalized citizens. So it really was uh, a solution. It was never going to be a solution to the problem that was seen with the fraud. And I think, that does lay at the feet of Tim Walz and his mismanagement of money. But I don't think the way to fix that problem was to send the 2,000 ICE agents to Minneapolis, because they knew there would be pushback. They knew the leadership is very against ICE, and it's a sanctuary city, and they knew the population was not going to be receptive to this. And so I think in some ways it was what both sides wanted, because it's an opportunity for the left to say, hey, look, ICE is fascist, and it's an opportunity for the right to say, hey, look, the left is interfering in trying to have a healthy immigration policy. And I agree with Dominic. There's a lot of people that really care about, fixing the immigration system, and um, making sure it's enforced more heavily. But I don't think that's what's happening here. I don't think they're really um, there's not an illegal migrant problem in Minneapolis. And so you send a bunch of people to solve a problem where there isn't, and it starts creating problems that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So,
Okay.
Well said, with the Batman Begins poster behind you too, so it made it even cooler.
thank you. Yeah.
Batman and Robin here. Okay, Daniela, final word.
I mean, if we don't have time for it, it's okay. I was just gonna share. I live in Los Angeles. I am an immigrant. I was born in Mexico and moved to the U.S. when I was 5. I am a U.S. citizen. I have family and friends that are also immigrants. Um, And I personally know someone that was detained about a month ago. He is Latino. He told ICE agents that he's a citizen, showed his ID, and I feel like just because of his skin color and accent, he was still detained. So it's hard as a Latina to not take this personally and label it as racism. Um, my parents talk to me and they tell me that I should always carry my passport and ID with me at all times. And yeah, I don't feel like living in fear all the time is okay, especially um, for people like a lot of people have not done anything wrong, and have done things, as Republicans say, the right way. Um, yeah, that was just my input, my personal experience.
I think there is a lot of fear out there. I invited two other guests to attend today, both in Minneapolis, and both said thanks, but no thanks. I think they didn't say this, but I think they feared that whatever they said and whatever was taped on this recording and whatever was posted online might come back to haunt them, and maybe ICE would come knocking on their doors, and they just didn't want to have any part of that. Um, okay, Chandler, you got your hand up.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to say, I mean, or at the point of fearing, as a Black American myself, it's hard to look at all this violence and see like other like law enforcement have killed Black Americans, not gotten any repercussions for it. And me looking at all this evidence and all this video footage of what the ICE officers did, they just killed American citizens in my eyes. It's hard for me to look at that and not be scared. And all I really want is them to have accountability for their actions. Really, at the end of the day, it's not even a political thing anymore. It's from what I see and from what I know, they killed people and they should be tried like a citizen, like everyone else in this country. That's it. That's how I see it.
I think the interesting twist in this case, in terms of the racial angle, is that both people who got shot in Minneapolis in recent weeks were both white. So I think maybe now even white America is waking up and saying, "Oh my God, we're all being targeted here." So I do want to say that back in 1986, Ronald Reagan was the president at that time. They actually pushed through Congress what was then considered comprehensive immigration reform. It wasn't enough, and we've had slippage since, and we've had a lot of people come over the border since. But that was like, what, 35, 40 years ago? I mean, that's a long time for our country to not address this issue. And in future podcasts, when we have more time, let's get away from the problem. We all know that there's a problem here, and let's try to focus on the solutions. What do we want to do about immigration reform? And with that, I will bid you all good evening. Thank you for joining us. One little pitch for our national conversation. Our students are nonpartisan. We have Republicans, we have Democrats, we have independents. Our guests are the same. We have a cross-fertilization that goes on here that we enjoy very much. We keep it civil at all times. I always worry before the beginning of one of these podcasts if this will be the one time when a food fight breaks out, but so far our track record is impeccable. 100%, we've been civil and respectful of one another. And I'd like to keep that track record going. And I hope that our national conversation becomes an important voice in the future of America, in the healing of America, and making America the country we all want it to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
This podcast was brought to you by Our National Conversation, a place where students generate policy solutions to the biggest problems facing America. Join us in freeing political dialogue from hyperpartisanship. To learn more about what you heard today, check us out at ournationalconversation.org. You can also follow us on social media at Our National Conversation to show your support and keep up with our latest efforts.